That jarring cacophony tells you you're back with the Power of Three podcast, travelling through space and time and having exciting adventures along the way as we look at Doctor Who novels, well, particularly at the start of the week anyway. I'm Kenny Smith, and today we are looking at Terrible Lizards, which was originally published as a novel in the Doctor Who 2-in-1 books range. This was written by Jonathan Green and it was published on the 17th of February 2012. The story was collected in the novel Monstrous Missions, along with Gary Russell's Horror of the Space Snakes. This book was later re-released individually with a new cover as part of the 11th Doctor Adventures range in the USA. This edition was released as an ebook on the 4th of February 2016 and finally came out in paperback on the 24th of March 2016. Let's have a look at the covers. As we look at the original one for Monstrous Missions, we can see it's a blue colour. There is the Doctor Who DW part of the logo centre, orangey to the left, more bronzy on the W to the right. There's a silhouette of Matt Smith's Doctor with his face hidden in shadow over on the right hand side, holding up the Sonic with a green light pulsing out of it. But coming out of the slit in the letter D is a rather nasty looking snake with its tongue hanging out. Looks a bit like a cobra with big fanged teeth. So yes, definitely concentrating on Gary's story there, the horror of the space snakes. However, when the book was given its individual release, Terrible Lizards was given the new form with the Doctor Who logo from, I suppose it'd be fair to say it'd be the Capaldi era version because the DW part is missing. And it's a big black box, Terrible Lizards in orange writing, and at the top we can see a Tyrannosaurus Rex looking at the TARDIS, which has got the door open, and there's a very Jurassic Park sort of background there as the dino looks like it's raging at the TARDIS. You shouldn't rage at the TARDIS. As we turn the book over, we can see on the back cover it tells us, in Terrible Lizards, the Doctor and his companions join a group of explorers on a Victorian tramp steamer in the Florida Everglades. The explorers are searching for the Fountain of Youth, but neither they nor the treasure they seek are quite what they seem. Sadly, there's no official audiobook reading for this book, but where you have no material to work with, what do? You create your own. And thanks to our podcast pal, Dr. John Bolin, here is an extract from the book for you.
It was as if the jungle had come to life, the trees and bushes in front of them shaking violently. With a wet, splintering sound, a pair of saplings came crashing down, and the first of the animals burst from the forest. Crashing through the undergrowth towards them was the beast the size of a tank, and with the armour to match. Its mottled green and brown hide was rough and knobbly, but it was the array of plates lined up along its back and heavily spiked tail that made it instantly recognisable. Amy remained exactly where she was as the creature charged towards them. The huge animal opened its beaked mouth and gave a sonorous, hooting bellow. Proudfoot's party had already broken up as the men attempted to scramble out of its way. "I know that one," she gasped, frozen to the spot in shock. "That's a Stegosaurus." "So it is," said the Doctor, staring at the heavily built beast thundering towards them. "And so's that one, and that one, and that one." More of the dinosaurs were emerging from the tree line after the bull stegosaur that was leading the charge, and they kept on coming. "It's a whole herd!" Rory exclaimed. Panicking sailors sprinted past them, back the way they had come across the clearing. "Yes, it would rather appear that way," the Doctor said, "and they're coming this way, so if I were you, I'd start running. Come on, Doctor's orders." "What is it with you and running?" Amy muttered, nonetheless doing as the Doctor told her. "Occupational hazard," he said, beginning to pick up the pace. "I've been wondering, Doctor," Rory gasped as they ran, "have you ever thought about running the London Marathon?" "Oh no," the doctor called back, Sonic in one hand, his jacket in the other. "Imagine it, running for 3 or 4 hours in one go. I'd get bored far too quickly." "Stop talking, boys, and run," Amy shouted. She glanced back over her shoulder. "They're getting closer." "These boots really weren't made for running," she added to herself. "I dress for the Renaissance, not for running through the forest being chased by dinosaurs." "That tree," the doctor said, pointed to the low-hanging branches of another cypress. "Get climbing." Amy and Rory didn't need to be told twice. Amy reached the tree first. The rest of the expedition continued back down the track they had cut through the forest, heading for what little cover the undergrowth there might provide. Grabbing a branch, Amy pulled herself up. Desperation lent her strength she needed. Kicking at the trunk to help get a purchase, she made it to the relative safety of the higher branches. From her perch, she leaned down to help her husband, the doctor forming a stirrup with his hands for Rory to step into. With the two of them no longer in danger of being trampled by the charging stegosaurs, Amy and Rory both stretched a hand down to help the doctor. "Here, take this," the Time Lord said, tossing Amy his precious sonic screwdriver so that he might get a better grip on the tree himself. Amy snatched it from the air as it tumbled end over end towards her. As she did, she caught sight of the charging dinosaurs again. "Doctor, hurry!" she screamed as he tried to climb up after them. The stegosaurs were bearing down on him like a fleet of bulldozers. He was a tangle of gangly limbs. He reached for Rory's outstretched hand, only to lose his grip on the mossy branch he was already clinging on to. As the bellowing bull at the head of the herd thundered past beneath them, its heaving flanks scraped against the tree. The cypress shook so hard Amy feared the dinosaur might bring it crashing down altogether. With a startled cry, the doctor fell. His cry of surprise was cut off abruptly as he landed on top of the beast, caught between the triangular, fin-like plates on its back. He gave a breathless oomph. Straddling the animal's neck, there was nothing he could do as it thundered on through the forest. The rest of the herd followed the bull, the ground trembling at their passing as if in the grip of an earthquake. As Amy and Rory watched, helpless on their perch among the crooked branches, the stegosaurs ploughed back into the dense undergrowth on the other side of the clearing. The last they heard of the doctor was a delighted cry of "Geronimo!" as the stegosaur carried him away into the cloying green gloom of the forest.
Thank you so much for that, John. So let's move on now and find out more about this book and how it came to be, as we've managed to track down the author, and we're delighted to welcome him to The Power of Three.
My name is Jonathan Green, and I wrote the Doctor Who novel Terrible Lizards.
Welcome to The Power of Three for the first time, Jonathan. It's a joy
Thank
to
you,
finally speak. It's taken us a while, but we've got there.
Yes, that was all my fault, but thank you for your patience, and thank you for having me.
Work comes first. We appreciate that. So maybe tell us a wee bit about your background and how you became a writer, please.
So ever since I knew that writing books was a thing, so I think about the age of 6, I've always wanted to be a writer. And I used to make little books, and I'd have great titles for them, and I'd staple the paper together, but it was more about the drawings than actually writing anything. And I drew sort of cartoon strips without any text. But then gradually at school, I enjoyed writing stories, and I wrote more and more of them, some utterly terrible ones, until the writing overtook the artwork. And as a creative process, it's just what I always did. So when I was 10 years old, The Warlock of Far Top Mountain was published, which was the first fighting fantasy game book by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. And when I read that, I think that was really when it hit me. This is something I would like to try and write myself. And it was about 10 years later, maybe, I think, I'm trying to think how old I was. I think I was 20 when I got my first commission to write a fighting fantasy game book. And so in my summer holidays at university, other people were going off and working in shops and whatever jobs, and I was writing a book. So I did that each summer when I was at uni, which is great. And from there, it just opened doors and gave me opportunities to other publishers, including, of course, because it was Fighting Fantasy were published by Puffin originally, Puffin Books with the Doctor Who titles. But yes, I've been published every year since, so it's been a long and varied career. I've done other things as well around it. So I was a teacher for quite a long time, but I'm now full-time freelance writer.
Well, may it continue. That's brilliant. I think that it would just, you're talking about writing, because as a former journalist, now a communications officer, I was doing exactly the same thing, making my own books and writing them. I think I was writing Hong Kong Fooey books at about 6 or 7 and putting them together. And just, yeah, I completely get that. That sounds very, very familiar.
Yeah.
So I would assume then that you were a bit of a fan of Doctor Who in your youth. We seem to be of a similar age.
Yes. I have really vivid memories of Doctor Who, but only like first episodes of things. So I remember, I think I was about 5 years old, but seeing a bit of Doctor Who and the Loch Ness Monster. I know that's what the novelisation was called. It was Terror of the Zygons, or it was where the Scarison appears and being like freaked out by that. And I also remember the Seeds of Doom, where the pod opens to begin with and the tendril touches a man, and that terrified me. And City of Death, where the Jaggeroth pulls off his face. And I've been rewatching them because I know on iPlayer, and it's been great. But when I was a child, these were absolutely terrifying. So my mum wouldn't let me watch them again. So I don't have any really complete memories of Doctor Who stories until the end of Tom Baker's run. So things like Logopolis, I remember all of those, and the other ones at a similar time, and Keeper of Truck, and then sort of from Peter Davison watched it religiously, and I've always watched it ever since. And people say, "Oh, who's your Doctor?" And I guess my first Doctor was Tom Baker, but to me, it's the Doctor. The Doctor is one person. It's just different adventures and different personalities and bodies. I
think somebody once said, "Who's your favourite Doctor?" And I can't remember who it was, but somebody said yes.
Oh, that's a great answer. Remember that for next time.
Yeah. So I would not put you on the spot with that sort of thing. So I suppose, having mentioned there that you were part of the Puffin Penguin family, that when these books were coming out, the 2-in-1 range as it was initially, that sort of made you an instant candidate for that. So do you remember how it all came about?
Yes. Although Fighting Fantasy had been published by Puffin, the series had finished in 1995, and I then started working for Games Workshop. So I was writing colour text for their army books, and I wrote novels for Black Library. So I hadn't actually written anything for Puffin for a while. But then I remember while I was teaching, I went into a bookshop and saw these choose an adventure books. Basically, they weren't what I would call game books, because it's literally just a branching narrative, and they were featuring the 10th Doctor. So this was the time, the Decide Your Destiny books. And I was, in my own head, if I'm honest, I was slightly dismissive of them, thinking because it is just choose an adventure, there's no actual game here, there's no skill involved or true decisions to be made. It will end up somewhere and have a successful ending. And then I thought, having been so sort of dismissive, I thought, but hang on, I could do that. So I actually wrote to Puffin. I didn't know the editor, and it just so happened that it was Leanne Gill, who was one of those people who's great because they give other people an opportunity. They're always looking to widen the circle of authors. So, of course, I wrote in my covering letter, and I've written novels for Games Workshop by this point. I'd also written steampunk novels for Baden Books, which will be relevant with Terrible Lizards later. But I basically said, and I wrote Fighting Fantasy game books. So she got in touch and said, oh, well, that's great. You can pitch me some ideas. We're literally about to commission the next round of books. Send me some ideas. So I think I sent her a list of 4, 2 of which were dismissed. One was too close to an episode of the Sarah Jane Adventure, which hadn't been broadcast yet. And the other one they didn't like. And then there were 2 ideas, and it was pretty much up to us, which do you want to do? So that became The Horror of Howling Hill, which was a 10th Doctor and Martha adventure. And then having done that, of course, I then knew Leanne, and I started doing time fiction for a kids range called Moshi Monsters. If you've got children the same age, you might be aware of that.
Oh, I know exactly what Moshi Monsters are. There's still a few in the loft. The Moshi Monsters movie, please don't.
Well, I wrote the novelisation of the movie, and that was an interesting experience. But it did mean we went to the premiere, and my wife got free champagne, and the kids thought it was brilliant. So that was all right. But yeah, and as a result, I then got to know Leanne, and she offered me other gigs. So when this project came along, she did actually email me to say, we're doing these 2-in-1 books. Would you like to pitch some ideas? So, yeah, there we go.
And from that, Terrible Lizards was born. I would guess, having reread it, that you're possibly a fan of Edgar Rice Burroughs and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle with The Lost World and things like that. Would that be fair to say?
Conan Doyle, definitely, yes. I've been influenced by his books in various different ways, and H.G. Wells at different times. There are certain themes, or not so much themes, but elements that keep cropping up in my books. So yeah, that whole kind of lost world and dinosaurs. I mean, I've, like most children, before I was really writing anything, I remember I had a coloring book of dinosaurs, but I didn't color them. I got my mum's greaseproof paper and I traced them like endlessly. So I was absolutely fascinated by dinosaurs, and went to the Natural History Museum in London with my dad and things like that. So yeah, that kind of pulp adventure, sort of Victorian. But also when I wrote Terrible Lizards at the time, I was writing a series of steampunk novels for Bowden Books. So that kind of, I was just surrounded by that whole milieu, which is why I said it's relevant.
Oh, it absolutely just feels that classic Victorian era fiction. Just has absolutely that feel to it, with the characters in there and just the settings. They feel very authentic and true to that.
Good.
So I imagine that bringing the 11th Doctor, Rory and Amy, into it was a real pleasure, because they've all got such vivid voices.
Yes. If I reread it recently, and I think it still holds up pretty well. I think I got Matt Smith's voice very well, and Amy's okay. I think probably Rory's slightly shortchanged in the story, but then I kind of think that was often Rory's fate. But yeah, I was loving the series at the time. My kids would say that Matt Smith was their Doctor, so I would sit down with them, religiously to watch it on a Saturday, which is a sort of special moment for me as well. My son actually read, this was the first book of mine that he ever read when he was about 7 years old, and his review was, "It's good," and it's still the best review I've ever had. So, but yeah, it was great fun writing for them, and obviously it just meant you got to watch lots of Doctor Who and rewatch it.
I like the way that early on there's an awful lot of references just in passing. It's not dropped in as gratuitous continuity mentions, just like pirates, oh no, not again, and things like that from Rory, which I think is, it's nice just to have that sort of, as people do in real life.
Yeah, part of that was because the original pitch was called Time and Tide, and it was still the same plot, but it wasn't Victorians. It was Blackbeard the pirate looking for the Fountain of Youth. And so people will think, oh yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean, but I read the original Tim Powers On Stranger Tides long before Pirates of the Caribbean came out, and I love his books, and that book is so much better than anything that the movies have done. So yes, I was borrowing that plot, but when I submitted it, they said, oh, you can't do pirates because there's a pirate story coming up. So that was when we changed it to the Victorians. So I kind of, I mean, because it's the Venture, you may have noticed this anyway, but it's the ship from King Kong. That's the boat that they go on, the tramp steamer that they travel on Skull Island is the Venture.
Oh, I did not pick up on that. That's very good. I like that kind of trivia. That's rather good. And I think it seems to come across that you had good fun building up your own characters as well, and bring with Ishmael and
yes, Ishmael is probably the one that's most fun. Yeah. Looking back, I think I would like to have developed the aliens a bit more, done something. And also, I don't know why I didn't do it, because you think the whole book's called Terrible Lizards. They should have been a lizardine race as well. But with hindsight and all the rest of it.
I love the fact that pretty much early doors, off they go wandering, and when they find themselves here in the island, and there's the Doctor ends up going for a ride on a Stegosaurus.
Stegosaurus.
Yeah. I love that. And of course, this is before dinosaurs in the spaceship.
Yes, when he rides the Triceratops.
And it's just that, almost like preempting it, it's just that lovely sort of symmetry to it, and it's so, well, again, it's so easy to visualise, just Matt doing that the way that he does it, and that must have been a bit of a surprise when, a year later, what's on the screens, but
it was, yes. But I mean, it's so hard, but there's other things. My knowledge of Doctor Who is not as in depth as I'm sure many people's, including yours, probably. And another book I wrote later, which is another game book, Night of the Kraken. There's the whole denouement where they use the lighthouse as effectively a big laser, and when I wrote that, I'd never seen the horror of Fang Rock, which of course I have now, and that is absolutely what they do at the end. But anyway, it got past editorial. So
tell us about the writing process. How long did it take you, and was it quite a tight deadline?
Oh, I can't remember that. I do remember the first sort of emails were exchanged in the summer of 2010, and it wasn't until 2 years later that the book came out. So I know it's sort of publishing schedules changed and things. I don't remember the deadline. I do remember it had to be under 30,000 words, so it wasn't too bad. But because of the wanting to get the tone of the characters right, it was quite an intense process. I mean, at the time I was writing full time, which obviously helped. But yeah, I probably got it somewhere, but I'd have to hunt it out. But I don't know how long it took me.
That's no interesting. I always find it interesting to sort of, I know what deadlines can be like, and just think of Douglas Adams' quote of those things that whiz by. So
yeah, he loves the sound of them as they whiz past. Yeah, I mean, in general, it's so vague. But I suppose I can probably write a book in about 3 months, but this one would have been shorter because it's a much shorter book. But I don't remember what the actual deadline was.
Obviously, when the Doctor goes off on his dinosaur ride, that takes him out the picture for a wee while in the book, and it does allow Rory and Amy to sort of take centre stage. And I think there's that whole voyage that they're on, and that's you're quite epic, and it does have a good adventure feel to it. Now, I don't want to say boys' zone, but you know what I mean.
Yes, I mean the books, the sort of when Leanne initially emailed to say that they wanted to do them. It was kind of meant to be for a confident reader, sort of 7 to 9 sort of age. I think it was mentioned that, to appeal to boys in particular. So, like most writers, I am my first reader. So I wrote an adventure that I thought I would find thrilling at that age. And I think at that age is when I first saw films like The Land That Time Forgot, which I've not seen for years. And I probably don't want to, because in my head, it's fantastic. Because obviously there wasn't anything to compare it to at the time. But just that whole Lost World vibe, like saying with Conan Doyle. And I had read the original Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton, so yeah, there's an element of, out of the frying pan into the fire. You escape from one thing, you're chased by another dinosaur, you leap off a cliff. I was reading the cliff was 100 metres tall. I thought that was slightly excessive. Didn't need to be that tall. And they're looking back at the T-Rex, although you'd be struggling to actually see it. So again, even just say, 15 years on, there's things I do differently now, definitely. But I think on the whole, it holds up.
I think it's exciting just that. I mean, I can imagine, my younger self. I enjoyed it now in my 50-year-old current incarnation, and I know that my younger self would have loved that as well. Just the whole chase and leaping off the cliff. I can almost hear the soundtrack to it. Although I was hearing more of a James Bond type soundtrack from David Arnold than Murray Gold one, but just that whole leaping off the go is very atmospheric. Just that as they meander down the river, and before they find their feet and climb out, which I think is a really good bit. And then just you get the cam after the storm when they find the Doctor sitting on top of the spaceship drive.
Yes.
And again, I'm picturing it like the Pandorica. That's just me. And
I was too, I think.
And it's just so nice to sort of that image of Matt just sitting there, just sort of almost first saying, "What kept you?" And it's very, very him.
I mean, you have to have the peaks and troughs. You can't have it relentlessly ramping up the pace. Obviously, there's always a new problem to solve to keep the pages turning. But you've got to have, peaks and troughs. You think of the W is what I normally write to that format. So it starts in some dramatic element and then it becomes calmer and up and down, like a ECG echocardiogram or something with the peaks and troughs of the story. I know that if you're writing for really young children, the idea is to write like a capital M, so it starts off as a lovely day and then something happens and that's sort of pacing the story.
Yeah. And we discover, of course, the whole thing's been caused by a leaking time field, and we meet Commander Malek, once he removes his human disguise, and it's quite a nice idea the way they've been keeping around Ishmael just as the sort of like the body print, a bit like Zygons in a way, needing a body print which they can base themselves.
Yes, I suppose, yes. I mean, it works for the story. It's the one thing which, obviously, because of the nature of Doctor Who, is slightly frustrating, is that how many aliens look like humans or have human disguises, because they don't really go all in with these crazy monsters. And it was obviously the same as something like Star Trek. But one of the things I loved about the more recent films, but also the 1973 animated series, 2 of the regular crew were proper aliens. One was like a cat woman, and the other was some guy, I think he had 3 legs. Like they couldn't have done it. They might have done it as a puppet. So I think that's great. So yes, it worked for the story that they all look like humans, but it's kind of like, oh, the aliens are humans again. But yeah.
Nice touch. Then we get the moment where the poor Tyrannosaurus Rex gets his brains blown out, and it's actually quite graphic the way sort of like the dinosaur sort of, it feels the moment when it's sort of the heat goes through its head and then it just collapses dead, and you think
his body catches up. Yeah, I did think it all got past the editor, but also there's the bit where the T-Rex actually eats one of the aliens and you hear the wet crunch, and I thought Wow. Yeah, I don't think that would have necessarily happened in the TV show. I mean, obviously they did kill a T-Rex in, is it Deep Breath? Is that
Yes.
the first 12th Doctor story? But it's kind of, it's not front and centre. You sort of see the flames from the distance, you know what's happened. But I suppose, although, yes, you might say book for kids, but that was the thing about Doctor Who is, as I said, it scared me as a child, but it also fascinated me. So, you know, the Doctor can't save everybody, particularly watching the sort of the fourth Doctor story. Several people have to die before he's able to sort of stop what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, even in City of Death, there's very few people actually die. I'm not sure if there's, maybe it's just one person, but there's the scientist who's working on the time machine. He's killed using his own time machine and turned into a skeleton, which again, for sort of 7, 8 years old, having not seen sort of films we have now, you'd think that's pretty chilling.
Yeah, poor old Kerensky. I mean, it does feel like a target novelisation. I think that's the thing that this range did so well, that had that accessible feel, so that it's great for the younger readers and older people can enjoy them too.
Yeah, well, that's how I read a lot of my Doctor Who stories, because having, you know, at the time, we didn't even have videos, so I couldn't watch any of the third Doctor stories unless, remember, bizarrely, I think BBC Two showed a few for some reason. Like, I remember seeing Carnival of Monsters on TV, but I'd read things like Doctor Who and the Demons in the Target novelisation and the Silurians, and that's how I knew those sort of stories. So yeah, I read quite a lot of those, the mutants, and I used to have a collection, but don't know where it's gone now.
They'll probably be in storage with your other books, hopefully.
Hopefully.
We get the Kalibas revealed, and we learn they're actually not really bad guys. They're just victims of an accidental crash in the vortex. And of course, time then starts to rewind, so the T-Rex comes back to life, and Amy and Rory get younger. I think that's somebody could imagine that the young Amy Pond coming back as well, and getting Caitlin Blackwood in. So yeah, it would be quite fun to sort of visualise that.
Yeah, I think I suppose people have described my work as being quite cinematic, and certainly when I write a story, I'm describing the film I'm watching in my head at the time. So it's like a common feature. Yeah,
and then of course there's a happy ending because everyone leaves and the T-Rex is still alive, and you even get to leave behind, I wouldn't quite say a Loch Ness monster, but there's something off the coast of Florida.
Yes. Yes, the Liopleurodon. Yeah.
Oh, very well done. Very well pronounced.
Well, I had a bit of a thing for Liopleurodon at the time. I've used them in books since, and I think it's because when you actually see them, they're far more terrifying than your typical plesiosaur, which is people saying, well, you know, the Loch Ness monster, something like that. You know, those Liopleurodons and mosasaurs, they've got absolutely massive heads, rather like a T-Rex, that are just all teeth. And the power of sort of 4 flippers, that'd be properly terrifying. I mean, obviously they've now had them in more recent Jurassic Park films, but obviously exaggerated in size and everything, but it gives you an idea of how terrifying it would be.
I do like also that Ishmael gets a happy ending. He gets to go off and explore, given that he's sort of restored with his having been made younger and then aged again, and he goes off and he gets a happy ending too. Yes,
he's kind of fixed, isn't he? He says he's not disturbed by the aliens, but I think, you know, partly the time fractures, you know, the fact he's slightly psychic. But yeah, you don't think his adventures necessarily gone for very long, but something to look forward to, maybe.
Yeah, he gets definitely involved in it and has fun along the way. Definitely sort of.
Well, I'm not sure what they do, because the fact is that the Calibas are scavengers, so they probably just go to like intergalactic jumble sales and things. But
that could be fun.
Junk reclamation yards. Well, there you go. There's another book.
There you go. Has there been one a junk? Sort of, but we kept thinking.
There was one of the Decide
Way.
Your Destiny. I think was Lost Luggage, which is the TARDIS ends up lost somewhere, but I can't remember now.
Well, we'll definitely be coming back to those at some point when we've exhausted the fiction range. So the straight fiction range without the Finding Fates, etc.
Yeah.
Having revisited it, was it more enjoyable than you expected? And obviously, there's little things you'd like to fix, as you've mentioned, but was it a good experience coming back to it?
Yes. I mean, it's a weird one, because in writing my books, I probably read a book at least 4 or 5 times in the process of writing it and editing it. And then you really can't see the wood for the trees. So to come back to it 15 years on, I knew obviously the main details. I didn't remember the names of characters like Ishmael Cain or all the details of what went on. So it was quite pleasing to read it and think, I quite like that turn of phrase, as much as the ones I'm thinking, well, those words are excessive, I've cut those out now. No, there are a few things that I quite like. So describing the dinosaurs in terms of, too many teeth and bad attitude, things like that, and all muscle and menace. I quite like those turns of phrase. So yeah, I didn't read it and cringe and sort of throw it in the corner.
That's always a good sign. So of course this was released as part of the 2-in-1 series alongside Gary Russell's book, The Horror of the Space Snake. So it was quite a lizardy, sort of serpentine, sort of scaly creature feel to it.
Yeah, well, they tried, didn't they? They tried to give links, similar stories to the fact it was called Monstrous Missions, and I can't remember what the other books were called, but there was always some loose connection. Was there one with robots? I'm not sure, but...
I do have them all here. There was Alien Adventures, Sightseeing in Space, Step Back in Time, in addition to...
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, they all have a sort of thematic feel to them that way.
Yeah.
And then, as we've both been reading the American reprint, that must have been a real surprise when that came out.
It was, because I wasn't told. I had no idea. I mean, well, when I've written for Doctor Who, obviously you don't own the copyright because it's BBC, but you don't have any rights in it. It's work for hire. You get a flat fee, so it doesn't matter how many copies it sells. So as a result, I've got no idea how many copies have ever sold of it, which is a bit something I'd like to know. And then I had no idea that this had come out. I think I was writing a blog post for my website about Doctor Who, and then was just searching for the book covers online, and this popped up, and I'd never seen it before. But I think I really like it as a cover. It's quite cool, and it does what it says on the tin. So,
it definitely does.
But yeah, it was a pleasant surprise.
And it's still available as an ebook today, so people can purchase it if they haven't got it already.
Yeah. Although we've given them the whole plot away now, but never mind.
Wow, I think after 15 odd years, I think we can be allowed to do that.
Yeah, a few spoilers.
But fantastic. Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat about Terrible Lizards.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Now, sadly, Doctor Who magazine didn't offer a review of Terrible Lizards, but to find out what people thought, we've gone over to Goodreads, as we usually do, and we have a look and see it's got a rating of 3.78 out of 5, and that's come from 68 ratings and 18 written reviews. We've got 27% 5-star reviews, 32% 4-star, 32% 3-star as well, 4% 2-star, and 2% 1-star. Let's have a look at a good review here. Here's a 5-star one from Joe Pranitis. Joe says, author Jonathan Green brings us an adventure of the Doctor, Amy and Rory as they land on a tramp steamer heading for Florida. The venture, the tramp steamer in which they have landed, is on a quest for the Fountain of Youth. The Doctor, being a Time Lord and one who can regenerate every cell in his body, isn't really interested in looking for the fountain, but for the cause of temporal anomalies that caused the TARDIS to come out of the time vortex in the late 19th century. Along the way, they are attacked by a large prehistoric beast that nearly rips the venture in two. Once they reach Florida, the Doctor is split up from Amy and Rory, who are chased by a T-Rex. This is a great book, and the twist ending is one to look out for, but I highly recommend this book to all Doctor Who and science fiction fans. Here's another review, a 5-star review from Jen. It was a very good book. Like the 12th Doctor in Deep Breath. Would recommend this book to read. Enjoy! Another 5-star review from Michael. A lovely little short read. Has most of the energy of most Doctor Who stories. Not as fleshed out as a longer novel, but that's okay. Just a quick Doctor Who read to get your fix. 4 stars also from Carol, with a C, because we know that matters. A breezy, simple fun read with a plot that is somewhat predictable, with a reveal that is far from surprising or shocking, and yet I loved it. A couple of hours worth of escapism for Doctor Who fans. We're not saying that word. Pure, joyous fun. Daniel Cookwan gave it 2 stars. I find this to be one of the few books from the series that doesn't work hard to transcend its young adult label. The story is quick but perfunctory. The banter is nice, but it's most surface cliché and continuity references. And the supporting cast is underdeveloped. I wish it could have been more, but I do love the title. So Daniel, I'd say, was fairly content. Remember, you can follow us on social media as Power of 3 Pod. We have a Blue Sky account at Finished Zine, and we also have a Facebook group where we'll be sharing both versions of this book's cover. And of course we have a YouTube channel as well, but it's just an audio version of what you're listening to right now. So if you're watching on YouTube but listening, thank you very much. Time to go, and we're going to play out with a song. And what could be more appropriate than that 1987 hit from Was, not Was, Walk the Dinosaur. Until next time, I've been Kenny Smith. Bye bye.